This is the CHRILLCAST. I'm Chris.
Nah, Will.
I'm Nyarly.
And today is Throwback Thursday, where we cover a game series, or game series from some odd years ago, depending on the day. Before we get into it, why don't I let Nyarly tell you about his channel?
What's up, guys? I'm Nyarly. I do videos on Persona and Megami Tensei. If you're a Fire Emblem fan, you might have heard of a game called Shin Megami Tensei Cross Fire Emblem or Tokyo Mirage Sessions, so you should check it out.
It's a good game, but it's not what anybody was expecting.
Yeah. But I mean, if you know about Shin Megami Tensei or Persona through that announcement or that game, then you should check out my channel.
Yes, I agree. 100%. Everybody go subscribe to Nyarly. I'll give you 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we're back. YouTube.com/NYARLY. That'll get you there. Today we're talking about Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones. Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones is a tactical role-playing game developed by Intelligent Systems and published by Nintendo for the Game Boy Advance handheld video game system, console, whatever the heck you want to call it. October 7th, 2004 for Japan, but the reason why we're covering it today is it's about turning 15 in the U.S. as it came out on May 23rd, 2005 in the West, which is, you know, all of us people over here in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, and all that good stuff. It is the 8th entry in the Fire Emblem series, although it's only the second one to be released in official English, unlike all the previous games besides 7, which had to be translated by fans. And it was the third and final title to be developed for the Game Boy Advance. There was the one with Roy in it, you know, the character from Smash, which most people in the West don't know. He actually had his own game on the Game Boy Advance. They only released in Japan.
Yeah, Fire Marth.
and there's Marth. Marth was in the original Fire Emblem game, if you didn't know, but also in the third Fire Emblem game, and also in the what is it, the 11th and 12th? 11th, let's see. So 8 is Sacred Stones, 9 is Path of Radiance, 10 is Radiant Dawn, 11 is Shadow Dragon. So he's in 1, 3, 11, and 12. And 1, 3, and 12 are all Japanese only releases. That's Marth. Okay, so he's only in one game officially in the U.S. The game Sacred Stones sold about 233,000 copies in Japan with no worldwide sales figures available. It has been re-released on the 3DS Ambassador program. So any of you lucky people that bought the 3DS and then got the Ambassador games for free from Nintendo because they lowered the price significantly, you've got it for free through the Ambassador program.
Were they lucky though? Because I mean, they get charged like over $100 more than everybody else. But I mean, I think those games sort of made up for it.
So if you didn't get into the Ambassador program, you can't get any Game Boy Advance games on the 3DS whatsoever, ever. So
you get on the Wii U though.
You can
if you have one.
I do.
Which not many people do. Me too, unfortunately.
Yeah. I also have one.
I actually never thought they were going to release Tokyo Mirage Sessions on the Switch, so I got a Wii U for Tokyo Mirage Sessions. I'm weird.
Ouch.
I have other games on there now, like Xenoblade Chronicles
I
X.
love that console, so
It's
I mean,
a
I'm
nice
not
console.
ashamed to say it.
Sacred Stones is well known for being a relatively easy Fire Emblem game due to the fact that you can literally just grind your units to an infinite level, essentially, at any point
I like
during
the
the
sound
game.
of
that. There's several places during the game where, like, if your units are under-leveled, you can just go train them. Whereas in previous Fire Emblem games, you would have to basically restart the game if your characters were under-leveled. But the game is pretty good about managing difficulty as you go through it, so unless you really suck at Fire Emblem or you overpower one character and let them die, the permadeath thing and the experience pretty much makes the game challenging, but not to the point where you're going to be behind or under leveled going into the level you're on.
Yeah.
Fire Emblem's pretty well designed for that. So Fire Emblem: The Sacred Stones, I guess I should really talk about this since I know that your guys' experience is limited. There are some elements in Sacred Stones that were introduced and then removed like immediately into the next game. Like there was an overworld map. Fire Emblem is not known for having overworld maps, at least, you know, pre Three Houses, pre Fire Emblem Echoes, which are the two newest in the series. But what they do is they introduce elements to the games throughout the series and then kind of piece part them later on. Like, oh, we kind of like that. Let's bring it back in the next installation. So Sacred Stones was the first one with an overworld map in the West. The actual second game in this entire series had an overworld map, but that was a Japanese only release for the Famicom. And it was actually what they used as the basis for the remake on Fire Emblem Echoes, which released in 2017. And that one had an overworld map. And now they have just straight up like a map where you can walk around, like a Persona game almost. You got the social areas, you can walk around. But they've also removed there's no overworld map anymore. At least not any of the gameplay I've played in Three Houses yet. There's no overworld map. But I'm not that far into it because I have no time right now to play games. Midnights are killing me. So Fire Emblem has this really interesting pattern of introducing elements and then they're gone, and then they're back, and then they're gone, and then they're back, and it's just like they constantly cycle through all of the elements they've used over the years to keep the gameplay fresh. I know other series have done that as well, like demon negotiations in Persona. I thought it was interesting they brought that back. What do you think about series that kind of recycle elements and bring them back, even if people weren't necessarily into that?
I mean, I think when they do that, it's a good way to refine those mechanics and make people warm up to them.
Get people more used to that idea for SMT.
Yeah. Although Persona 5, I think, didn't do that good a job of demon negotiation, but it definitely did it better than Persona 1 and 2.
You're not wrong. Mark danced crazy. Will, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so I think sometimes when they recycle elements, it can be like, it could have been a good idea before, but just really poor execution. But, re-implementing it could actually like bring that idea to fruition and actually have it work. Sometimes reintroducing elements that have been taken out actually can revamp a series. So that's what I'm kind of hoping for with Halo. They've taken out a lot of the core aspects of those games in the recent iterations, and they're seemingly putting them back. So a lot of people are excited about that. But as far as doubling down on things that people didn't like in previous games and like reintroducing them, and they still kind of suck. I mean, I don't think it's ever a good idea, but a lot of developers will do something like that where they've taken out the worst part of like a previous game and they put it into a new one for unknown reasons. But there must be some kind of monetary gain to doing that.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to bring up though, like Sacred Stone does like bring in some new elements that they implemented actually pretty well. I thought for an overworld map. They just made the game like way too easy. Like for me, there's no like replay value for me to replay this game because the story doesn't really change. Once you played it twice, because there's 2 routes that you can alternate between, there's not really a point to play this game again unless you want the like harder difficulty, which still isn't that high. No offense to anybody that thinks this game is hard, but it just isn't hard. Not for anybody that's a hardcore Fire Emblem player. This guy does a pretty good thing here, Chaz Aria. Actually, that's one of the guys that we're probably going to cover in later on when Eric comes back on. But as far as this goes, like bringing gameplay elements back from a previous Fire Emblem game, for us in the West, nobody even knew that the overworld ever existed in Fire Emblem. But one thing that they do really well in Fire Emblem is the core gameplay remains the same. You got the overworld map, you got the grid pattern, you've got ranged and close-up fighting. And then the other thing about Fire Emblem is they don't ever remake or remaster these games, at least not till like 25 years later, or if the original implementation was just crap, like with Gaiden. And I think that's really interesting because you've got 2 different things going on here. You've got Atlas, who seemingly remakes every single game within like a decade of the original re-release or the original release. And then you've got Nintendo, who just doesn't do remakes of Fire Emblem games, or rather Intelligent Systems, I should say. Which is better? What do you guys think? Would you rather see these games remade, or would you rather see them just left in the era they were made in?
I guess it depends on the game, really.
Yeah.
Like there are some games that I think that like should get updates, but at the same time, I also see a lot of people asking for games that I don't think need updates, like Persona 3.
I think Persona 3, if they did a definitive edition, like an actual definitive edition, not necessarily a remake, just like combine all of the various elements together and then just up it to 1080p.
Yeah,
That's
like
a
a
great
remaster.
game. Yeah,
I'd say, yeah, it definitely needs a remaster, but like from the ground up a remake, no, it doesn't need one.
like I wouldn't expect them
Yeah.
to put it in the Persona 5 engine, like some people keep asking for.
No.
But the art assets have been updated for the dancing game, so you already have upgraded assets for the main characters anyway. Anyways, this is not the gameplay I was expecting.
No. That was a nice comment, though.
I just saw it. I was like, oh, okay. World of Long Plays. They're like our BFFs for this channel because anytime we want gameplay, World of Long Plays has it. Going back to the conversation though, like, Will, what do you think as far as 343 remaking all these Halo games? Is this something you like seeing, or would you rather them work on new games? Because that's always the argument, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, in a perfect world, they'd be able to do both and make both really good. I don't think like all of my favorite games, there's always a flaw. So I think there's always room for improvement as far as like a remaster. So like, updated graphics, making controls less clunky or something like that, or more intuitive UI. But as far as an actual remake, I'm super hesitant on almost and like any game that you actually cherish, because what are the chances they're going to catch the spark of that original in a remake without changing it and changing it for the year that you're in versus the year it came out, because a lot of times games have things in them that are no longer acceptable or a trend that no one cares about anymore, so they might change it, and that destroys the soul of the original game. But going back to like 343, I like what is the company that actually does the remaster version of those games?
Starts with an
It's
S.
not 343.
Is it Saber?
Yeah, it's Saber. Yeah, it is Saber. I really like what they did with Halo 2. I think the animations, the coat of paint, and everything they did to that game was amazing. However, with Halo CE, although it still looks good, I think their remaster kind of sucks a little bit in some areas because it totally ruins the ambiance and like the atmosphere of some levels, especially 343 Guilty Spark. For everyone who's ever played that game, it's supposed to be in a swamp, it's supposed to be spooky and misty, and the update they have it in a rainforest and it's super bright, no longer scary.
I agree. I remember playing it originally. It was much more correct ambience wise.
Exactly. So that's the problem with having a remaster, and then a remake can completely change everything. It can completely break the original experience. I think it's rare where you have something like, Resident Evil, where the remake is really good. And something where a remake is usually just inferior, and you ask yourself, why does it even exist?
Like, for example, changing all the music in the Persona 1 remake. A lot of people are going to question that, especially since the composer didn't change. I know Nyarly has some thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's not good.
Let's go from, the kind of creepy, more, I don't know how to even describe it, but the ambience of the game is dark and it's a little kind of mysterious, and then they changed it to J-pop, and those are completely different feelings.
Because they want to make it hip and cool for the kids.
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's like that's the trendy thing to do right now, and that can completely ruin the core game.
Yeah. Anyways, I think they should potentially remake it because Intelligent Systems has done a really great job with their remakes. I think this would be a great one to do because it's a one-off. They can test the waters for remakes on the Switch, and I have a lot of faith in Intelligent Systems remakes because they've done a good job so far. Other than Shadow Dragon, we're not going to talk about Shadow Dragon. And I know I'm going to get some comments because the last time I mentioned how my dislike of Shadow Dragon, we got some comments like, "That's my favorite one." I'm sorry, I just don't like it. I like it better
I'm
than.
sorry, but your opinion is not valid.
I like Shadow Dragon in the aspect of what it is. I just don't like the art assets. I think they did a poor job with the art, and they've also not. It's hard to explain. There's two halves to that story. They only gave us the first half. Why didn't we get the second half? Why did Japan only get it for the second time they've remade this game? In this case, Sacred Stones is a standalone one-off game, easily remade. And if they do this and it's successful, I want the Roy game also. Fire Emblem Sword of Seals or Binding Blade, depending on when you've played the game. They've changed the name 6 different times, retconned it to a different name. But this game deserves a remake. Make it a little harder. Let's get a Maniac difficulty going on. And boom. As always, I'm Chris.
And I'm Will.
I'm Nyarly.
And we will see you
On the next CHRILLCAST.